Good evening, friends, and welcome to Sleepy Time Tales, a podcast aimed at helping you to get a good night's sleep. Do you find your mind plagued with the stresses of modern life, especially when the lights are out and you're trying to get a restful night? Does your spinning mind keep you awake? Follow my voice down the path towards a good night's rest. Listen to me tell a story that will keep your mind from wandering to your daytime problems, the ones you can't solve right now and will be easier to solve while rested. Listen to my voice and allow yourself to drift, following the twists and turns of the story, but slowly letting go and drifting into sleep. So what exactly is Sleepy Time Tales? What is it for? What is this strange thing, this strange idea, this podcast that you're supposed to fall asleep to? Lack of sleep is a health crisis in the 21st century, and this is a podcast intended to help those that it can to get a restful night. Do you find yourself lying awake at night, mind spinning and emotions in turmoil with anxieties of 21st century life? Do you wake up in the middle of the night and find yourself not quite able to doze back off at 3 a.m.? I'm here to help. My name is Dave, and I'm your narrator, here to help you into a restful night. Sleepy Time Tales is intended to be used as a distraction to what keeps you awake at night, or sometimes background noise or company. That's why I make these episodes quite long, so that I'm here for you, without any pressure of the end coming. Now, as far as I know, there are a couple of different ways to engage. The primary idea is that it gives you something to focus on, a story or an event that lets you keep your mind on a specific point, to stop it from spinning out into stress and anxieties, to focus just enough not to resist the embrace of a night's sleep when it comes for you. Or maybe you need something a bit simpler, a little bit more primal. Maybe you just need some kind of background noise. Some people like white noise, or the sound of the ocean, or wind in the trees, or the rain, or some boring dude droning on in the background. What counts, though, as you listen is that you don't try to force the sleep. Just keep a light mental grip on the thread of the story and allow the need for sleep to come for you. I'm hoping that you're asleep before I get to the end of the episode, but don't feel pressurized. It may not work on your first night. It'll probably take a few nights for you to get used to listening to my voice. Maybe my accent is strange to you. Maybe one episode just isn't long enough. Or maybe the problem isn't so much going to sleep. Maybe your problem is waking up in the middle of the night. What I recommend, because it's what works for me, is to let the podcast run all night. Download a whole bunch of episodes, enough to go through the whole evening. Put them into a playlist, and then when you go to bed, start them up and let them go. That way, if it's still running when you find yourself awake at 3 a.m., you can just carry on listening and allow yourself to go straight back to sleep again. You can even do the same thing if you wake up before the alarm, 60 minutes or as little as 30 minutes. Carry on listening and allow sleep to come back for you again. And you may wonder what the point of that is. What good is an extra 60 minutes or 30 minutes of sleep? But I've had people actually email and thank me for suggesting that. Because there's something about allowing yourself complete relaxation right before the alarm that's satisfying on a whole new level. And it's very important that you try to relax. If you're new to the show and prone to late nights lying staring at the ceiling, this may seem strange to you, so give it a chance. Because I'm here to work with you, to create a safe space, a cocoon in which you can curl up and allow nature to take its course. So if you're still with me, thank you for staying. If you're already asleep, we'll chat again soon. And of course you aren't hearing me, except maybe in a dream. Before we get on with the show, I'd like to ask for a couple of minutes of your time. Holiday season is incoming, and now would be a great time to sign up for the Patreon. or make a once-off contribution via the tip jar on the Sleepy Time Tales website. Patreon support has fallen off a bit as some long-time supporters have moved on, which is perfectly fine. I'm grateful for the support while it lasted, and I'm grateful for everyone who listens. I appreciate any help I get and would be really thankful for anyone who can step into the gap if they're so inclined. Because I'm in South Africa, a few dollars goes a very long way. So even at the lowest contribution level or whatever tip you can spare, it really will be useful. Don't feel guilty if you can't, but if you have been considering it, now would be a great time. On the Patreon, there's a $2 and a $5 level with rewards available for that. And whatever you contribute there or through the tip jar will really, as I say, go a very long way. But another way to help the show is simply to spread the word. You can help me in my mission to give more people a restful night's sleep by telling people about it if you know someone who's struggling. And if you do it on social media, please make sure to tag me in at Sleepy Time Tales on Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok, where I can see and I can thank you. Shout out to the music, which is Sweet Night and Friends by Kumiko. Their work is available on their website at loyaltyfreakmusic.com. And just as a fun aside, I'm working on my own piece of music, which I'm going to start using from episode 200 on the 19th of December. I'm very rusty, so I've spent months on this 30-second clip, but it's starting to come together. I'll share a very rough mix on the Patreon in the next week or so for people to have an idea of what's coming. Thanks again. Thanks for your time. Let's get back to the show. We return this week to old glass and how to collect it. By J. Sidney Lewis. Syllabub was a mixture of wine, ale or cider, with cream or milk, and flavored with lemon or rose water. The whipped syllabubs were beaten into a froth before drinking. They were often made with milk drawn fresh from the cow, the drinkers repairing to the dairy for the purpose. Syllabub glasses, as far as there were special glasses used, were of deep cup or tumbler shape, the brim flaring outward. Cordial and strong waters glasses. The art of distillation came from Arabia, as the name alcohol, indicates. Northern peoples, however, for a long time preferred to the distilled products cordial waters made from honey, fruit syrups, spices, and various herbs. Each notable housewife had her own recipes for cordials, and many and quaint were the products that came from the family storeroom. It was not, indeed, until comparatively recent times that the habit of spirit drinking made any great headway in England. Whisky was made in Ireland in the 14th century, and must consequently have been known in England. Howell in his letters refers to the Usbach of Ireland, but remarks that whereas in England they drink it in aquavitae glasses, in Ireland they drink it in beer glasses. The quotation proves that even in that early period, special glasses for spirits were in use. Green, some 30 years later, includes among the glasses he ordered from Venice small glasses marked for brunch. The taste was probably intensified after the Revolution of 1688, brought numbers of Dutchmen into the country. The glasses employed were, generally speaking, miniature replicas of the wine glasses in vogue. Others are short-stemmed, and as this did not lend itself to air twisting, the baluster type was mostly affected, which in such small glasses gives a peculiarly massive appearance. Opaque twisted stems are, however, more frequently met with, as are fluted ones. Sometimes the bowls are fluted or faceted. The dumpy, thick-stemmed, white-bowled cordial glasses are often termed Hogarth glasses, they being the prevailing type in his pictures. The modern equivalents are the firing glasses used at Masonic banquets, the members after each toast knocking the glasses in unison on the table, the sound produced being fancifully likened to the reports of guns. Figures 1 and 2 are illustrations of firing glasses, the former being antique and the latter modern and strictly utilitarian. Not all cordial and strong waters glasses belong to this type. Some of the most valuable have long stems, either plain or opaque twisted. Many of the latter, however, came from the Netherlands and stand outside the category of English glasses. The thistle glass has come to be the recognized Scottish liqueur glass. The form originated, it is believed, in Bohemia, but once it had made its way here, it was natural that the Scots should take for their national liquor the glass that bore the form of their national emblem. At any rate, the beginning of the Scottish glass industry was marked by the production of a thistle glass, which was made at the factories in Edinburgh, tavern and household glasses. It is customary to refer to tavern and household glasses belonging to a separate classification. There is really no justification for any such division. It is perfectly natural that utensils for common use should be stronger and clumsier editions of the better class glasses. The very earliest were clumsy in the extreme, as regards design and rough in execution. But later specimens show greater elaboration and skill. With the advent of the drawn glass, most tavern and household glasses took this form, and have retained it with little variation. Two kinds are noticeable, those with a blow inside the stem and those without. In the drawn stems, the blow shrank in dimensions and became a tear, which, by the way, is almost invariably upside down, broader end being uppermost. Halfway through the 18th century, the tear vanished altogether, and the plain solid stem came into use. The common wine glasses were small editions of the larger glasses, and frequently bore rudely executed decorations of festoons, vine leaves, and flowers. The feet are flat and may either be folded or unfolded, the former being of the earlier type. Specimens are fairly easily obtainable, the thickness of the metal and the stoutness of the design carrying them safely through the dangers to which they were specially liable. Apart from their age, they have no special merit. The metal is as inferior as the form. Tumblers were less frequently made in the 18th century than were wine glasses, and in the early part, at any rate, those that were met with were chiefly foreign importations. It is possible that the plain lines of the tumbler did not appeal to tastes accustomed to the graceful outlines of the wine glasses. The earlier ones are cylinder-shaped and very large, while 18th century tumblers taper somewhat towards the base. Both are very scarce. Now and again one meets the barrel shape. Foreign tumblers are often profusely decorated by engraving, colouring, and gilding, the quality of the decoration being distinctly inferior to its quantity. The rummer is a characteristic Old English public house glass, and is of various types. It was, of course, as the name implies, used for making punch. Among the types are the ogee-shaped bowls, either plain or pressed, barrel-shaped bowls, and trumpet-shaped bowls. All have short, thick stems, often with a collar, sometimes baluster-shaped. The base is strong and generally flat. Some specimens have heavy square bases, evidently designed to secure their stability. Cut glass. The introduction of the so-called flint glass, which was in effect glass containing a greater quantity of lead than had previously been used, created something of a revolution in the art of the English manufacture. Monsieur Peligeot, a leading French authority, remarks, "To the English should really be attributed the honor having created, in their flint glass, a new product which, by the quality and selection of the materials used in its fabrication, has become without doubt the most beautiful glassy substance which we know, and which, in my opinion, it may be possible to produce." But in addition to the beauty of the metal was the fact that it had a greater refractive and dispersive action on rays of light than any other kind of glass, and consequently lent itself specially to cutting, the workmanship bringing out the beauty and brilliancy of the metal, and the quality of the metal enhancing the effect of the cutting. It is difficult to fix, with any degree of precision, the date at which glass was first cut by way of ornamentation. There are certainly traces of its employment towards the end of the 17th century. At the beginning, the craftsmen of Bohemia were probably far superior to those of England. But as soon as the special suitability of the English glass was demonstrated, the native workmen speedily outdid all foreign competitors. The quality of the glass and the cutting gradually improved until at the close of the 18th century, practically all English glass of any importance was ornamented in this fashion, and the English product was famous all over the continent. In this way, the beauty and value of a piece speedily came to depend upon the amount and depth of the cutting. The more deeply and profusely it was incised, the greater its artistic merit was assumed to be, and the more highly it was esteemed. In certain instances, undoubtedly, the art was carried to excess. Hence those monstrosities of the early Victorian period. Clumsy masses of flint glass cut into hobnails, facets, pyramids, and spikes of all shapes and dimensions. Of this description are the massive glass chandeliers, which depend from the ceilings of country houses and halls, built at the close of the 18th or the commencement of the 19th century. Possibly no better examples could be found than the massy centerpieces with their pendant drops and spiked clusters that adorn the pavilion at Brighton, that lordly and pseudo-oriental pleasure house built by the first gentleman in Europe, who afterwards became George IV. Of similar type are the lustres with their jingling drops that ornamented so many mantelpieces in our grandmother's and great-grandmother's day. How often in a theatre has one sat in fear and trembling lest some great glittering mass in the centre of the dome should break loose from its moorings and fall with dire effects on the pit and stalls below. It was under the same conditions that bottles altered their shape and became decanters. These, as will be seen from the illustrations, followed the prevailing fashion, in being massive and deeply cut. The stoppers were most frequently of a mushroom shape, and were often delicately cut. These decanters were generally made in pairs or in sets of 4. From what has been said, it will be evident that the glass-making activities of the 18th century were by no means confined to the manufacture of drinking glasses. There is no reason to doubt that, even at so early a period as that in which Chiddingfold was a great centre of glass manufacture in this country, many important and really fine pieces were produced. Few examples, however, of what may be termed miscellaneous 18th century glass can be attributed with any certainty to a period earlier than the 60s of that century. At that time, the glassmaker's art was passing through a great period of upheaval and momentous change, like the country itself was in both politics and in art. Nor was the change confined to England. In France, the florid style of decoration made with the name of Louis Quinze was given away, even before the death of the monarch after whom it was named, to the more simple and severely classical style of Louis XVI. In England, the dawning of a new taste in artistic decoration became evident about the year 1770, in the work of the silversmiths and goldsmiths, and shortly afterwards in the productions of the porcelain factories of Bow, Chelsea, and elsewhere. In glass, a noticeable feature of the change was the increasing use of faceting. Flat facets, divided by sharp angles, are to be found on both stems and shoulders of the glasses, and oftentimes extend halfway up the body itself. Dishes and basins of this period were often completely covered with pyramidal designs, so deeply incised that the ware could hardly be handled without fear of breaking. It was about this time, too, that cutting was first done by machinery, in the manner already described in Chapter 1. The fact that the art of cutting and engraving reached its zenith at this period accounts for the reputation which English glass speedily achieved, not only in its native home, but on the continent and in the New World. There is no doubt that much of its popularity was due to the superiority of the material itself, and this was maintained by the most scrupulous care in the selection and purification of the ingredients. The sand in particular was most carefully washed and burned, so as to destroy all impurities. In practice, most of it was obtained from Alum Bay in the Isle of Wight, from Lynn or from Reigate. Sand pits have also been discovered at Colston and Redhill. The fusing of the ingredients was also a matter demanding the greatest care, so as to ensure the correct color. It was found that, generally speaking, the quicker the operation, the better the result. Any delay, too, in the blowing or rolling of the glass was apt to interfere with the purity of the color, and even the precision of shape and the accuracy of the measure. Few persons troubled to consider whether shapes that depended on the process of blowing were the most suitable for their purpose, or whether the cutting and engraving were not sometimes overdone. On the whole, it is difficult to overrate the beauty of Georgian glass, of the early or the late period, either as regards grace of shape or style, or the cutting and engraving. Collectors, too, have plenty of scope, for though Georgian glass is comparatively rare and fine pieces command big prices, yet the amateur is not faced at the outset, as in the case of glass of a period prior to this, with two very serious propositions: an almost prohibitive price, and a more or less doubtful authenticity. The illustrations shown of 18th century glass will make it clear that although they are some of the most satisfactory specimens of the time, not even an amateur could mistake them for modern, their shapes alone being almost a guarantee of the date of their origin. Even if the shape be imitated, the peculiar dark, pearly look of the old flint glass cannot, and it forms a simple and definite taste. The pair of decanters are almost unique. The deep cutting, the curiously shaped stoppers, the long and rounded necks and the flat-cut shoulders being absolutely characteristic. But it is not unusual to find these graceful shapes copied, and again the collector must beware. Some of the court decanters have, as will be seen from the two on the left of the illustration, hollow bottoms, in which are inserted tiny musical boxes. When the decanter was raised, the box started playing some familiar air, generally Home Sweet Home. Whether the intention was to remind the holder that he was at home, or to hint that he might think of going there, probably depended on the circumstances. Other sets of decanters with engraved festoons and similar decorations of the same period are equally graceful both in design and execution. The stoppers are flat pear-shaped drops, and are doubtless of the Adam period. Another feature is their long, thin necks, which made them more suitable for private houses than inns. They usually stand from 12 to 18 inches in height, and when standing grouped together have a charmingly graceful appearance. They are rarely now to be found in fours, and it is doubtful if they were so made. I've only ever seen them in pairs. They are not particularly rare in many small houses possessing specimens. It was at this period that the finger bowls came into fashion. The first ones made in this country were probably copies of old Roman colored bowls. The earliest of all had two lips, used either for pouring out the contents or for resting a spoon upon. These specimens are, as a rule, exquisite, both in style and shape, and it is, fortunately, within the power of the ordinary collector to acquire a specimen or so at a reasonable figure. There are the larger and more ornamental pieces, some unique in design and others possessing historical associations that are priceless. The old chandeliers often found will give some idea of the fine cutting of the period. The magnificent pear drop-shaped lustres, the fine work on the stem, and the crossover chains are characteristic of the lavish ornament of the age. Such have often been converted into pendants for electric light. Although no ordinary collector may hope to acquire them, they are not without interest as examples of a bygone fashion. Through the kindness of Miss Whitmore Jones, I am enabled to reproduce from a beautiful collection at Chastleton House the posset pot shown at page 42. It is surrounded by a band of masks and roses and surmounted by a crown. It is an excellent example of the work of its period, and one of the most admirable and beautiful specimens in existence. Figure 15 is an interesting illustration of the candlesticks and taper sticks formerly so widely used. Taper sticks were used to hold the tapers used in sealing letters. That on the left is nearly perfect in style and ornamentation. Taper sticks are, of course, frequently found in Georgian silver and also in china, generally with the ink tray, snuffers, and powder box to hold the sand used in drying the writing. The glass taper sticks were generally about 7 or 8 inches in height and had domed feet. The candlestick with the twisted stem, which by the way is of red drawn glass, is another fine specimen of the work of this period. Unluckily, examples are hardly likely to be very easily found. Like all fragile things, they have suffered heavily at the hands of time. Figure 16 is a representation of a very rare type of rushlight holder, which dates from Jacobean times. There is no doubt that the beauty and style of the Georgian glass, both early and late, have made it in great demand today, so that not only are enormous prices readily obtained for good specimens, but those prices are likely to be considerably enhanced in the future. Nevertheless, there are still many fine specimens to be obtained by a collector who will take the trouble to seek them off the beaten track. Many of them are owned by persons quite ignorant of their real value. Hence it is obvious that there is still sufficient scope for the collector of Georgian glass to acquire specimens which are not only pleasing in themselves, but which are likely to bring him profit as well as pleasure. It is only essential to emphasize once more the necessity of care. For glass, unlike china, has no marks by which its period and place of manufacture can be definitely determined, and collectors can only base their opinions upon such qualities as shape, style, color, etc. And in this, as in other departments of life, the amateur is apt to discover the truth of the adage that a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. It is best in any case of doubt to refer the question to someone who is in a position to speak with undoubted authority. As to the Victorian age, although it undoubtedly produced many fine specimens of glass, yet the pieces have little appeal from the collector's point of view. Apart from this, however, it has many merits, some pieces that I have seen having been most beautifully and choicely cut, and with fine distinctive style. But however choice, such pieces hardly fall within the category of Old English glass, and lie beyond the scope of our inquiry. Chapter 4. Memorial Glasses. No specimens of English glass have greater fascination for the collector than those which derive their interest, apart from their intrinsic merits, from their association with some historical event, some great cause, or some famous personage. Fortunately for such, our ancestors in the palmy days of glass manufacture freely availed themselves of the possibilities of this form of advertisement and commemoration, so that a considerable number of memorial pieces are still in existence. Many of these were, of course, merely intended to record some happening of purely local significance. The building of a bridge, the opening of a canal, the launching of a ship, or narrowing the interest still further, the birth of a son or the marriage of a daughter. Others, however, had a wider appeal. A great national victory on sea or land, the winning of an election, or the passage or defeat of a hotly contested bill in Parliament. All were suitably inscribed and generally dated, a fact which adds to their importance and value, and frequently decorated in addition to the usual conventional designs, with a more or less crude pictorial representation of the event or of some important factor connected with it. Thus the Battle of Trafalgar would be indicated by a picture of the famous victory, or by a portrait of Nelson. Frequently such glasses were dedicated to the glorification of some famous hero, as were the Nelson glasses, Keppel glasses, etc., or to the furtherance of some great cause, as the Jacobite glasses, with which we shall have presently to deal at length, and again to the diffusion of some political principle. The collector must, however, be chary of assuming that a memorial glass was necessarily contemporary with the event it records. The warning is particularly necessary in the case of Jacobite glasses, of which large numbers were made by faithful adherents of the House of Stuart, long after the Jacobite cause had been relegated to the limbo of lost hopes. And it is perhaps unnecessary to add the further warning that in connection with the old glass, as with other antiques, the supply seems somehow mysteriously to adapt itself to demand, and it is the easiest and least detectable of frauds to take a veritable old glass of no particular merit, and by inscribing it with a motto and an emblem or two, increase its value 20-fold. There is, of course, much old glass stored, more or less inaccessibly, in ancient houses up and down the country, and every now and again some such hidden treasure is brought to light. But it may be generally said that, in the view of the fierce light the modern craze for antiques has thrown upon such hiding places, the prospects of the present-day collector of finding, say, a Fiat glass, are so remote as to be practically negligible. The Jacobite glasses form by far the most important of English memorial glasses. They were used by the followers of the ill-fated House of Stuart, not only in their homes, where indeed their use might be dangerous, but in the clubs and secret societies which met to keep alive the pretender's memory and to plot for his return. Great numbers were probably made, mostly it is thought at Newcastle, whence the manufacturers might, in case of need, speedily retire across the border and seek concealment from the law among a sympathetic population. Unfortunately, few only remain, for when the toast had been duly honoured, it was a frequent custom to shatter the glass, that it might be used for no inferior purpose. A similar custom prevails still in certain military messes. The stem of the wineglass being snapped after the toast of the remaining monarch has been duly drunk. Some of the Jacobite glasses, however, were of superior quality, and admirably inscribed and decorated. These, it is assumed, were carried from place to place by their owners, often in properly fitted cabinets. Each member of a Jacobite club probably brought his own glass, which was stored with the others between the meetings in a secret receptacle, the possession of such a glass being, of course, treason. Thus it is that many have been preserved, frail memories of a lost cause and symbols of a loyalty as unparalleled as incomprehensible. At this distance of time, it is difficult to understand the glamour that surrounded the Stuart cause, and the wealth of loyalty that was lavished on objects so painfully unworthy. And on that slightly morose note, I'm going to call it a night. Thanks for listening, and if you'd like to pick up where we've left off, as always, you can find the original on Project Gutenberg at the link in the show notes. Thanks again for joining me on this episode of Sleepy Time Tales, the podcast designed around a bedtime story to help you to get a restful night. New episodes will be released every Sunday night to give you something fresh to help you rest in a new week. But make sure to subscribe in whatever service you use so that you get your new episodes whenever they come out. A reminder that the music for tonight is Sweet Night and Friends by Kumiko. Check out more of their work on their website, which you'll find linked in the show notes. Good night, and sweet dreams.